Welcome, welcome. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good morning, Julian. I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, welcome to pre-invent.
Good.
How exciting.
I know. Here we are. I'm all ready today. So I couldn't find any old reInvent t-shirts. I know that I have some from like 2012, 2013, but I dug up an old Sam the Squirrel. Here we go this way. Sam the Squirrel t-shirt. Got a hoodie on here. Oh, people are saying there's an echo. The echo might be on my side. So I'm going to try switching to headphones on this one. Sorry for that.
Cool.
But ready to go. Ready to go for sure.
Your Vegas hotel room doesn't look too bad.
It's not too bad. I've got my standard, my water and my banana, and that's pretty much how I would start my Vegas day. So here we are.
No gambling before breakfast?
No gambling before breakfast. Although I did have to run out to the street to bring some garbage outside, and my gamble was probably going so fast that I could have slipped and fallen. But that would have been like running through Vegas to get to a talk. So it's I'm living part of the experience here today.
Excellent. Well, everybody who's watching, really super welcome. So happy you can join us. This is the serverless official kickoff to reInvent. The big show starts tomorrow. So there's been a whole bunch of stuff that's been going on beforehand. And so, we Chris and I thought we'd just give you a rundown of what's going on. So, Chris, what are you talking about today?
Yeah, well, this is the session before the big show, right? So this is the pre-event episode, as it were. Most of the big activities start actually later tonight. And then tomorrow we've got the main kickoff of the day. We have Andy's keynote. We'll get into the full schedule here in a bit. But let's bring up some of our slides and information that we have here. So again, for those of you who don't know who we are, and again, thank you for joining us for wherever you might be coming in. My name is Chris Munns, so I lead developer advocacy for serverless here at AWS. I am based just outside of the New York City area these days, holding it down in my home in northern New Jersey. And then Julian, why don't you say a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I'm on Chris's dream team, one of the lucky developer advocates, which Chris shepherds us super well. And I'm based in London. I'm originally from Cape Town, if you can hear the marvelous accent. And I come from an infrastructure background. So I say I'm a recovering more infrastructure architect and engineer. And yes, I'm living the dream and loving to tell people about serverless, and also getting your comments and feedbacks and everything about how we can make serverless even better for whatever you are whatever you're keen on. So we're both keen and all in on serverless.
Absolutely. So we've got actually a whole bunch to do here in this hour. And one of the challenges that we have that keeps getting bigger and bigger for us is this concept of pre-invent. The time before reInvent keeps going up. So the first thing we want to do today is talk a little bit more about some of the big things that we've recently launched. We might have a cool demo from Julian on some of that cool stuff. And then we'll talk about what's coming up across the 3 weeks of reInvent. So a little bit of a different year again this year for reInvent. We'll talk more about some of those logistics here soon. Cool. So pre-invent. So Julian, I know you joined the team last year, just a little bit before pre-invent. You were like the pre-invent hire on the team, I guess.
I was the ramp up as quick as you can. Reinvent's coming. Learn all the stuff.
And could you imagine all of the craziness that happened even before you got to Las Vegas that year?
No, not at all. The amount of incredible hard work that is basically culminated in a year's worth of product work, a year's worth of marketing people building up to stuff, and so there's all the feverish, literally writing the code, deploying it. You can think how huge AWS is. It's not as though on the night before reInvent someone hits the deploy button and off we go. A lot of these products and features are rolling out over the weeks beforehand. The product managers are going mad to make sure that everything's done super well. And us bloggers on the compute blog and the developer advocate team and the many advocates and Jeff Bars of the world are literally smashing keyboards like mad. And our job is not to just look at these products and features and pull things out of our heads. We literally play with it. We provide feedback to the whole life cycle of the product. And so we've been deep into all of these releases that have been coming up over the last few months. So and there's loads.
Loads.
Never mind, we're not even at reInvent yet.
Yeah. So I have the old fart history of having been here at AWS now since the first reInvent. So I've been a part of every reInvent. And this period of pre-invent only started existing a couple years ago. And what happens basically is, we have reInvent. It's one big week, but we've gotten so big that if you look at Andy's keynote and Werner's keynote, and even like Peter DeSantis's Midnight Madness keynote, we've got too many things to launch that we can't fit it all into that week. So we started doing a couple the week before. Then we started doing a couple the week before that. But this year, pre-invent is pretty big, right? So reInvent this year is 3 days over 3 weeks. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening during those 3 weeks and those 3 days over those 3 weeks here soon. But this is, again, a different model. Pre-invent right now is typically those first couple periods before reInvent. However, we've had so much stuff going on that this year pre-invent basically extended all the way to October. So Julian and I today are going to be talking about some of those things that we launched maybe all the way back in October, which at this point feels like it was like 5 months ago. I feel like I can't even remember October. Yeah. But I can remember what we launched, so I guess that's what matters here. So we're going to be covering a bunch of stuff from there all the way up literally to today, which is November 30th. So with that, I guess let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in. I just want to say, the time you're talking about, the stretched time, this year has been the crazy year of just time going mad, of people being at home and everything. And so that's one of the things I'm excited about reInvent as well, is that the barriers to attending reInvent before are, hotels and flights and visas and, time off work and everything. And so, yeah, excited about this reInvent this year because it's literally all virtual. We've got, so much content that can be consumed literally from where you are at home. And so, yeah, we're just excited that we can, in fact, make reInvent even bigger for people who couldn't attend in person beforehand. And yeah, it's all going to be a bit interesting. We're going to see how it all works, but at least, it's so much more accessible to so many more people.
Absolutely. All right. So
let's talk about some stuff.
Here we go. We've got 30 minutes and change to get through this before we have to talk about reInvent. So
30 minutes. Only 30 minutes.
Warp speed on this one. So the first one we'll talk about here, and I'll let you get into the guts of this one here in a moment, is AWS Lambda extensions. And this is a really fun one that we actually worked on here for a really long time. Announced back in October, and it unlike some of people often make fun of the names that we have for AWS products sometimes. Extensions is probably like one of the best accurately named things for a capability and feature. It allows you to extend Lambda. And so, what does that mean? If you've been using Lambda, if you've known about serverless for any period of time now, you know that these services are to a degree kind of black box, right? In the sense that we don't necessarily expose to you all of the internals. And that's purposeful. We don't want you thinking down to certain levels. We want you focused on your application, focused on your configuration, focused on what your business needs and not all that other undifferentiated heavy lifting. But what we've heard over the years is that there are still places where you do want that exposure. You want to be able to plug in, say, monitoring tools or logging tools or security tools or observability tools or whatever have you, to be able to get into some of that black box space. And so extensions lets you do that. And so, Julian, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the kind of extensions that we have and some of the rest of this. So Julian is the global subject matter expert on extensions. He led all of our launch activities for it, demos for it. So I have to hand it over to him because I know he knows it the best.
Well, thanks, Chris. That's setting me up for something. Yeah, I'll say team effort. We've got amazing doc writers,
yes,
an exceptional product manager working on this. So yeah, I'm happy to tell the story. Now, extensions is cool, and one of the things, a theme for 2020, and not giving anything in reInvent, and I've got to try to make sure I do that, is a lot of the theme of this year is, we love Lambda. Lambda is cool. It does so many awesome things, but there are some things that you need to do differently with Lambda, and some of those things differently are really good, like moving your applications to an event-driven application. It has huge benefits and really, gives the power of Lambda. But there's some things that make it a bit difficult for people to take on Lambda. And extensions and a number of things we've been announcing this year and through reInvent is going to sort of build that bridge just to make Lambda a little bit easier to use, and not Ajay Nair, who's the big Lambda boss, talks about the snowflakiness of Lambda, not in a pejorative sense, but in a way of, well, why does Lambda have to necessarily be different? And so extensions is one of the big things. And as Chris mentioned, it's all about being able to connect these extensions and plug them in, is the analogy, directly into the Lambda service to be able to get more information out of the Lambda service. So yeah, Chris mentioned diagnostics. That's a great thing. You can now get your telemetry data, your log data directly from the Lambda service, and an extension can go and do something with that. There are ways that you can start up have a bit more control of how a Lambda function starts up, and it allows you to change the startup behavior, which I'll go into, and some other things which I'm going to show quickly, which is fetching configuration settings and some cool security capabilities, which allows you to do things with your functions. So click on the QR code link there. There's a blog post which I wrote, and that's got off into a whole world of stuff about extensions.
Yeah, real quick, Julian, I realized something. We didn't do a good job of setting the context for this session here today. So this is live. We are streaming on Twitch and YouTube. And I think that's it for right now here, Twitch and YouTube. So we've got folks that are watching on YouTube. We've got folks that are watching on Twitch. Now we're using a pretty cool tool called StreamYard, which allows us to merge all that stuff together into one. And so we actually see your questions coming in here live. We're happy to try to address those. I know that we also have James and Eric from our team here. So that's EDJ Geek and JBESW across the two platforms, or you'll see Eric Johnson showing up here on YouTube. But I just realized that I think that when we comment in the StreamYard box, it might only go to Twitch. And I know that I'm only looking at Twitch on my iPad. So if you are on YouTube, for example, Stuart, who said hi to us, we are here. You can ask those questions and we'll try to answer them verbally. And or James or Eric will help answer them in that chat. But this is live, and we are definitely down for answering whatever questions we can along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, please do your questions. Myself and Chris will attempt to answer some questions if we can while we're doing this live. But yeah, James and Eric are awesome. And Stuart Miniman, I presume this is at STU on Twitter. Stu used to be an analyst with oh, my brain's gone dead. Stu used to be an analyst with theCUBE, and he's now with Red Hat. And Stu, I know, is all in on serverless and absolutely loves serverless. So thanks for joining us. And some of the other guys, we can see Mark NCA. So welcome.
Yeah, Mark's here. Mark,
yeah, absolutely.
Mark introduced me last year at, I guess it was Serverless Conf New York City. Mark, keep me honest on that one. So it's good to see some familiar faces and folks in this chat here. We all very much wish that we could have had a chance to, swing through a spot here in Vegas at some point, but maybe the next time.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, then, thanks, Chris. That good. Our live streaming will get better, I presume, as we tee these up and do some better intros. But onto the tech. So Lambda extensions we talked about. They're two different types. They're internal extensions, and this basically means that you can have your Lambda function. You don't monitor your code. You don't have to change your code and anything, and you can just modify the Lambda runtime as it runs up. So the Lambda function runs within the Lambda runtime, and you can do basically change the startup of the runtime process. Two different ways to do this. Won't get into too much detail now. Head to the blog post for that. But there's some language-specific environment variables. So things like Python and Java and Node and .NET have little dash whatevers that you could put on the end of launching Java or launching Python or launching .NET, which could run another DLL or which can add some more observability or some extra information for Python, for example. And so literally you add an environment variable, don't change your code at all, and the runtime starts up with these extra environment variables. Super easy just to add some functionality. So that's the internal extensions, what we call. And then, I've jumped over. And then what we've got, these are external extensions. Now, the internal extension, as I mentioned, changes the runtime, so it runs within the process of the Lambda function. It's just another thread within the Lambda function. But external extensions are super cool because it runs a whole separate process in addition to your Lambda function. So this runs as a parallel, independent process, but still within the same execution environment. So before you could only run a single Lambda process, and that's all you can do. And now an extension runs as a separate Lambda process, but what's cool about it is it can actually start up even before the runtime starts. So the extension in a way starts, the runtime then starts, the Lambda function does its bit, and then the extension can keep on running after the Lambda function has been processing. So this opens up a whole world of possibilities, to be able to grab some telemetry data from the Lambda function, to be able to time the runtime, to be able to inject some things into the runtime that's going to be happening. And if you think of extensions as just starting, there's a whole bunch of future possibilities and so many things that are going to be able to go on with extensions. So we've got our little Lambda function, and wrapped around that is an extension that can do a whole bunch of stuff before, during, and after a function invocation.
Yeah, it's one of those features where there are just so many different things that you can do with it, and it really is cracking open another part of Lambda, much like the runtime API did 2 years ago when we announced layers and runtime API. It made it so you could bring any language almost to the Lambda environment, and now what we're saying here with the extensions API is you actually have the ability now to interface with that environment in a completely different way. Like you said, do things from modifying the runtime to injecting essentially before or after certain code that you want to execute. And so it provides quite a lot of capability, as we'll see here.
Yeah, and many more to come. So the third little bit is about just the logs API. And anyone who knows Lambda realizes that logs automatically get sent to CloudWatch. But the logs API is an extension to this, which allows you to grab logs directly from Lambda. So you literally create an extension and Lambda streams the logs to your extension. And then you can transform, you can filter, and you can send them to anywhere. So is that Elasticsearch? Is that S3? Is it dumping it to a file destination? And in a way, doing a separate log send to CloudWatch. At the moment, logs also get sent to CloudWatch as well. You can disable that if you want by just stopping the IAM rules to allow access to CloudWatch. And so this gives you a whole bunch of different functionality that you can literally stream the logs directly from Lambda and send them to anywhere else you want. So that's also where at the early days of this, we've got some good partners who are building some logging extensions, and there's going to be even more and more. Yeah, have fun with your logs. And I'll show you a quick demo of what that means shortly. In terms of how extensions work, as I mentioned before, there are some new things with the Lambda lifecycle. So you can see that here that we've got the extensions starting before the runtime starting. Does this kind of work? The function does the initialization, the extensions does the initialization, running all the code in the init part, and then off you go. You have a Lambda invocation, a function invocation, and the extension can keep processing as a separate process at the same time. Cool thing about this as well is you look on the bottom on the purple line, and that's just managed by the Lambda service. The actual starting and stopping the runtime, all still managed by the Lambda execution environment. You don't have to worry with that. Extensions is a little bit of code. Yes, you do manage it yourself, but that hook between your extension and the Lambda service is really, really close. And you can see when Lambda functions aren't used anymore, they are freezed and then thawed, and that makes it super efficient, so you never pay for idle. And the same happens for extensions. And then the cool thing is you can see for the second function invocation that look, that extension is still processing after the function invocation has happened. And so you could pull out telemetry data or send some logs somewhere or do whatever. So we've sort of expanded this Lambda lifecycle, given you some more hooks in, and you've got more possibilities to do some clever things with Lambda. But don't get too confused about all this, I've got to write these extensions and everything. We've got a whole bunch of extensions available from literally some of your favorite partners, which you may already be using. So back to my comment before about, I really would like to use serverless, so I'm playing with it, but it's been quite difficult to then link it up with some of maybe my other partners. Well, look at all these. This is day one partners that are able to use extensions. And technically, extensions are delivered as Lambda layers. So if you want to stick a Datadog, Epsagon, AppDynamics, Splunk, Stackery, Sumalog, and I'll go through all the names. If you want to add their capabilities to your Lambda function, you add a Lambda layer. That's not a hard thing to do. Super easy, super low touch. The most configuration you do for some of these ones is do an environment variable. So for example, if you are sending telemetry data to one of these partners, they may require a key for an environment variable. So how hard is that? Add a Lambda layer to your function, add 1 or 2 environment variables, and off you're gone. And the cool thing is you're not then instrumenting your code. These partners are doing amazing things, and you don't have to write all of the stuff in your Lambda function code. So anytime you can reduce your Lambda function code is a winner. Super easy to get these extensions going, and yeah, off you go to the races.
There you go. Yeah, I think the one key part that I kept coming back to as we were working on launching extensions was the simplicity. And I know both you and I come from backgrounds in managing server infrastructure over time. We've done some odd bits of like configuration management and infrastructure management and things like that. And I've installed quite a number of the logos here on the screen in a server-full world, as it were. And you've got to get the daemon installed to get the daemon configured and configure your you're either in a cloud world, your security group, or your firewall rules, and you have to make sure you've got the right init scripts or the right configuration files. And sometimes just like installing an agent isn't just a single command. Even in using tools like Chef or Puppet, it could be a pretty complex, set of things that have to execute. But the simplicity here of add a layer, configure a couple environment variables for most of these at max, that's drastically easier than what you'd see in other places. So even though we have kind of extended, I can't use the word extended when talking about extensions, even though we have grown the capabilities of the platform, you aren't necessarily weighed down with a whole lot more complexity to get that. So I find that it is still a very smooth solution for being able to use some of these awesome products that are put out by various AWS partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And just going back to that code thing, every time your function invokes and you've got a Lambda layer, it's pulling the updated version can pull out the updated version of these tools. So it's not as though every time a partner or yourself updates an extension or a Lambda layer that you've got to then go and redeploy your Lambda functions or go and change your code to take advantage of new functionality. The layer can be dynamically updated. Off you go. So super powerful and super simple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And awesome. I'm going to go into a quick demo. I know we're already running short on time and there's so much to get through. So I'm just going to quickly show you some stuff. The cool thing is this is all open source. There's a whole bunch of, that's a QR code to a GitHub repository, which has extensions code. And there are a bunch of different kind of things. There's how to use an extension, which I'm going to show very quickly with app config, a custom runtime demo. So that's if you want to build your own extension. Whole bunch of information on how you can hook back into all the various parts of the runtime, and then the logs API. And I'm just going to quickly show you a function that sends a log to S3. There's plenty more: Bash, Node, Python, Ruby, Go, all examples over there. If you want to create your extensions or see how to use extensions, this is a great open source resource of lots of different stuff.
Yeah, and you'll see us real quick here. Some people might be confused by this. You'll see us use this domain s12d.com. What is that? Well, the very awesome Eric Johnson on our team, maybe back over the summer, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, built a serverless link shortener demo application. And it's pretty awesome. And so our team's been using it for as a link shortener. So you'll see S12D. The S12D is kind of a play on how people will shorten things like K8S is Kubernetes. And there's a lot of like weird acronym number pairings like that in the industry. So S12D is serverlessland.com, but it's our link shortener. So you can go to that QR code or to that short link, and it'll drop you right to the GitHub repo that Julian's talking about.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. So demo time. Let's make a bigger screen so we can look at some stuff, and we'll remove some things. So yeah, quickly, I'm just going to do 2 demos. One, I'm going to show a demo with AWS app config. If you're not aware, AWS app config is an awesome service, and yet there are many different ways at AWS to store configuration parameters. You've got secrets manager, you've got parameter store. App config is in the similar vein, but it's got some extra cool stuff. That app config is not just about getting a parameter or a secret. It's got a whole deployment configuration with a controlled deployment and validation and rollback. So it's a really cool way that you can control the way you can deploy function configuration. And this isn't just for Lambda. This could be on containers. It can be on EC2, for anything. So the cool thing is you've got function configuration that you may need to manage and deploy, and app config can do with it. And you can hook in Lambda functions to do some pre and post tests. If the post test turns out to fail, you can roll back your app config configuration. And there's a whole world in there. And I'm just going to show you an example here for app config that we're going to live update a configuration for a Lambda function. So we can see here we've got an external extension that's running, and I've deployed this super quickly. I will explain how that happens as well. And the extension is basically a little HTTP server that's running a version of app config as an extension, which just caches information from the app config service. So you may think, why do I bother? I can just write code within my Lambda function that can pull information from app config directly. Yes, you can, but you've then got to run the app config client or an SDK within your code, and you've got to do a number of things. That's got startup time. That's code you need to manage. So this extension, it's a Lambda layer. You just simply add it into your function, and then what you can also do is your function code just makes a local HTTP call to the extension, which is running as a separate process, but within the execution environment, to get that app config information. First of all, that means that is super fast. You're not even going out of the Lambda execution environment to get your app config information. So if you think of it for, say, synchronous API calls or something, you're making a super fast, super quick connection to app config, and you don't need to also know how app config works and have to write the code to get the app config stuff yourself. Just make a local HTTP call. So if I jump across without heading too far into my console, basically these are all stored with SAM. So AWS SAM is our serverless application model, which is infrastructure as code for steroids for serverless. And Chris has the little SAM logo. And if you go to the GitHub repo, I've deployed the 3 demos I'm talking about. And it's so quick. You just do SAM deploy, off you go, and you can go and play with the demos yourself. So really good. So these are the 2. Basically, I have what has been deployed is a Lambda function. And this Lambda function has some code. You can see it only requires HTTP. So I haven't got an SDK or anything in here. And it's basically going to get a configuration thing from a local HTTP server. Sounds simple. The config to add the app config configuration is a layer over here. If I wanted to add another layer, I go through the arduous process of clicking add layer and adding another layer with the on. It's super easy. I am joking about anything being arduous. So, okay, what does that mean? So currently within my app config configuration, and I'll need to let my browser just refresh, I have a logging level. So what I've done is I've got a little bit of configuration in here that decides what my logging level is going to be. And at the moment, I've got that set to normal, say for normal logging. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update that to verbose logging, and I'm going to roll that out to a number of Lambda functions. Now, if you've got 1 or 2 Lambda functions, sure, what can you do? You can go and change your environment variable and maybe read your environment variable from Lambda and do something with that. But what happens if you've got 50 Lambda functions or 100 Lambda functions, or you maybe only want to target a few Lambda functions based on a customer ID or some sort of trace kind of metrics? This is where this can get interesting. So basically, I have an app config thing over here, and I've got a log level set to normal. I simply test invoke my Lambda function, and with the power of going through all the execution environments and the world as my oyster, when this function executes, I have this value that has come, and it's basically from this local extension retrieved log config is normal. And this is also telling me I've got a cold start. So I haven't used this Lambda function for a while. And so it is cold started. And if I click that again, what would I expect? Well, I've now got a warm start with the Lambda function, and my log level is normal. So think of it, I'm now in warm start mode for my Lambda function. I don't have to redeploy my Lambda function or anything, but you know what I want to do? I actually got some kind of thing I want to troubleshoot, and I want to create a new hosted configuration, and I just want to say I want to change my logging level to verbose. So all the details in the GitHub repository about how this works. So I'm skipping over some of the app config stuff over here, and I'm basically going to send out a deployment for app config. I'm not going to do anything fancy. My production environment of version 2 and my deployment strategy, I want all now. So I'm just going to basically deploy this new configuration item out. And I could have got super fancy, and I could have done a whole bunch of Lambda checks, pre and post and that, but I'm not worried about that. So this is just going, so that's basically deployed. So my app config has deployed. I'm going to test my Lambda function again, and look at that. I've still got a cold start, so I haven't, because if I was to redeploy my Lambda function, I would then get some cold starts. So I still have a warm start, and I have an app config configuration item that has now come from app config. So think of this, maybe I wanted to do verbose logging. I've got some script that grabs a customer ID, or I can look at a trace and know from even a service map maybe that this will maybe impact 20 different Lambda functions. Make my app config configuration change, and not the next cold start, but literally the next invocation of the Lambda function. I've got verbose login. So that's just an example of how I can use an extension to do that. Obviously, there are plenty more. One other one, I'm just going to quickly look at the log extensions, and this is super simple. Basically, I've got a very small log extension that is going to write data to S3. So as my console refreshes over here, I've got the extension. The cool thing is you could do this before, but where do you have to put your code? You'd have to do code of two different places. You'd either have to write code within a Lambda function to say, we're not doing X, Y, Z, send just the function logs or something off to S3, or you could build a whole other Lambda function that would then grab logs from CloudWatch logs, and that would send that to S3. So you'd have to have another Lambda function managing your logs to send them off to S3. Extensions makes that much simpler. So all I'm literally going to do here is I am going to do a couple of test invocations of this Lambda function. You can see I've got the layer deployed over here. Yeah, the invocation has happened. I'll do another one just for fun. You can see also within my function code, I've got nothing. I've literally got hello from Lambda. So I'm not having to write anything fancy or anything clever within my function code to ship my logs to S3. I'm not having to run another whole Lambda function to ship my logs to S3. And by the power of an extension, if I there's a refresh button. There's a refresh button. So I've literally got a text file that has appeared in S3, and that's been super simple. And I've just had to consume that by literally just grabbing a Lambda function, grabbing a layer and adding it to a Lambda function. Nothing over there. And if I was to look at that file, getting more into the detail of the logs, you can decide platform logs, function logs, and extension logs. I happen to pick platform logs. So think of this. You've got this in S3. You could then grab it from some other process from S3, send it to, or you could send it to an Elk stack, or you could send it to anywhere else. Lots of functionality, super simple to get going. And look on the GitHub repo. There are lots of other options for sending your logs to any kind of fancy places.
Wow. That first demo you did, that gets me every time, because being able to change the data in a warmed function environment is something that people have wanted to be able to do since the very early days of Lambda. In fact, there are people who have built entire fast platforms around the idea of invalidating worker environments at certain points. So that's a cool one. That's a really cool one. I gotta get more app config set up for my stuff.
Definitely. And think back again, that's an app config, but we think of all those partners which are doing extensions as well, super simple to set up, all the kind of functionality that they provide as well.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Again, this is live. Do folks have any questions? I see Eric and James are trying to throw back replies to questions here, but does anyone have any questions we could take on extensions? Again, multifaceted capability. Lots of things that you could do with it. You saw some logging stuff here. You saw some configuration stuff here. We didn't get into any of the cool like partner observability stuff that's out there. But boy, quite a lot you can do with extensions. It's like we can just end the Twitch now, Julian. I think we've done it.
We've done it.
Over. No. I will say, and I know we've talked about this, there are some of us have talked about, is extensions the biggest thing that we will launch all year? And I guess all I could say is people are just going to have to watch for the next couple of weeks and see.
Yeah, exactly.
Extensions is pretty powerful, but we didn't save it for the big show. So you got to wonder what's going to happen in the big show.
Cool. Yeah, I just see there's a question saying where are the docs. If you go to the QR code or just search for introducing Lambda extensions, the blog post is there. It links to the docs. The docs are actually really good. Links to the GitHub repo there and everything. So literally just Google search for introducing Lambda extensions, and it's all there. Yeah, James has also
James and Eric will drop it in, I'm sure. All right, so now we have 40 other feature announcements to get through in 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go fast New Yorker mode through some of these, but please do stop us and ask any questions if you've got them.
That's the one. Sorry. Yeah. Let's go, Chris.
Let's go. Cool. So VPC endpoints for Lambda. This is one that people have been requesting for a while now. Especially after AWS first launched the concept of service endpoints inside of a VPC. So what does this allow you to do? It basically allows you to expose a service API inside of your VPC such that you don't have to go through a NAT gateway or a network address translation gateway, some sort of proxy or some sort of host that would have a public IP address on it. And so this could be really powerful for organizations that have really strict egress regulations and controls. They want to prevent traffic from going from inside or outside of their VPC in any reason. And so you create this endpoint, and then essentially it just looks like the Lambda service API exists inside of your VPC. Now, this isn't the same as your functions being inside your VPC, which is a capability that we've had for a number of years now. But for customers who want to build complex architectures completely inside of the VPC, this now allows you to do that without having to go, again, egress through some sort of transition point. So a small little thing, but something that I know a lot of people were looking for.
Yeah, and again, super simple, just punching straight out of your VPC to Lambda, all of that network complexity just removed. So yeah, simple one.
Cool. All right, AVX2 support. So we happen to have the AV2 expert James on the line for this one here as well. And James will tell you we were watching this feature come, and we hadn't really given it, I guess, the time to really understand exactly what it did and how it worked. And then James jumped into it, and I'm sure he'll post here his blog post for this one. But we came to find that AVX2 is really, really cool. So AVX2 is a chipset capability. It allows you to do a number of fun math things. So as we have here on the slide, higher number of integer and floating point operations per clock cycle. That's a whole lot of nerd stuff if you turn and ask me, I guess. But what it means at the end of the day is that you can now make use of some advanced capabilities of the CPU that you couldn't before. And so what can you do with this? Certain ML, certain AI, certain computational workloads will be significantly improved. James put together in his blog post here some information about taking an image and running different types of vectorizable algorithms on top of it. And so these different improvements here, which are typically somewhat compute intensive, just by enabling, or actually you don't enable AVX2, it's there. Just by compiling your code for AVX2, you see these improvements. So you see here, the baseline for this was a 32% improvement. And you are still, when you improve the speed of your Lambda functions, they not only finish faster, but they also cost you less, right? Because duration and cost are directly tied to each other. And so this is an improvement, again, in two different ways. And it's really straightforward. It's just kind of there. So you do have to compile your applications to take that in, depending on your runtime language, depending on the third-party dependencies that you might be using. There might be some extra work in the build side of things involved. But I think this is one that, again, if you are doing things like image transformation or ML type workloads, you'll want to take a look at this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Bigger, better, faster, more Lambda. That's reinvented.
And Julian, and James put this in here, free to use, absolutely. So everything we've talked about here so far, extensions free to use, AVX2 support free to use. With VPC endpoints, there is a small cost for the endpoint, similar to how there is with NAT Gateway. And so you'll want to check that out on the VPC pricing page for that one. Amazon MQ. So Amazon MQ is another service that we have here at AWS. Initially here we supported ActiveMQ as the MQ engine. And ActiveMQ is something that's used across businesses, large and small of all different types. It has been for many years. And so it works kind of similar to a Kinesis or an SQS. And now what we've done back in, I believe this was October, early November, made it much easier for you to have Lambda be able to consume from MQ. Previously, being able to consume from Amazon MQ meant that you ran a daemon or a process somewhere that would essentially be ready to receive the information. We've now Lambdafied that, and so it's much easier to attach a serverless technology, Lambda, onto something that's a lot more serverful, which is MQ. But a good, awesome win for people who are doing stuff with MQ.
Is that our new official term for when we onboard a new service, that we've Lambdafied it? I like that.
We've Lambdafied it. Absolutely. Lambdafied it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So, and this next one is also important for a number of people. This is code signing for AWS Lambda. And this is all, as it says, a trust and integrity control. And so this you basically you create a signing profile, you sign your application artifacts. So you wrap your Lambda function within this code signing thing. And then when that Lambda function actually gets to the end stage and is deployed to Lambda, you can verify that Lambda function has happened. So it's all great and well when a developer thinks they're writing all their cool Lambda code, but by the time it's gone through all the CI/CD pipeline, or it's been verified by X, Y, other kind of team, whatever's kind of happened, this is just a verification thing to say at the very end, what the developer checked into the repository and signed is what's happening at the out end. So yeah, this may not apply to you, but there are a lot of customers who really want to be absolutely 100% sure of the provenance of their code going through their service, and this is just another and really simple way to add that code signing for Lambda. Yeah,
I've seen requests of this one from everyone from banks to healthcare to startups to large technology companies. This is again another one. If you were to go through your demo for this, it's just like click, boom, super straightforward. Very little in the way of overhead in setting this up. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Amazon SNS FIFO topics. So FIFO, or first in, first out. This is a capability that we've had in SQS now for a little while, and now it's made its way to SNS, which SNS, Simple Notification Service, is often feeding SQS or Simple Queue Service queues. And so as the name might imply, this allows you to essentially be able to maintain the ordering of the events that come into a topic and then consume them out from that topic in that order. There's lots of places where you'd want to do this. Certain things around like transactional based services, services that can't support a random item potency or anything like that. This will really help benefit that. It's really pretty cool what happens behind the scenes to make this one work. And so if you do have a workload where you care about ordering, and that's a really important thing to you, then now you have this extra capability.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next one up is Amazon MQ for RabbitMQ. So yeah, RabbitMQ is a super well used and well known messaging technology, used within enterprises and smaller things as well. And so this is, part of the way that AWS is just going to help to be able to operationalize and manage those kind of things. So if you've got an existing RabbitMQ and you've got, message brokers and everything, this is a cool way that you don't have to manage your RabbitMQ yourself. You can port it over to AWS without having to rewrite your code, the AMQP, MQTT, WebSockets, all those kind of things, and just that sort of sense of relief of not having to have the operational complexity of managing your own RabbitMQ clusters. And yeah, don't have to change your code. Job done. You are now you've RabbitMQ'd, and you can then Lambdafy your RabbitMQ.
Yeah, I always like to compare these types of things to RDS. And so when AWS first announced RDS, Relational Database Service, people who are used to managing databases were just like, oh my God, this is so cool. This makes my life so much easier. And then we've done the same for, Memcached and Elasticache, and a couple other services like ActiveMQ. And it's the heavy lifting of managing these things that doesn't pay for itself. Whereas using these types of services removes that burden from you. And so it's just an on-ramp to, simplified operations, simplified workflow, and so forth. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah.
All right, EventBridge, DLQs. I'm gonna talk about this one. I got the opportunity to write the launch blog for this one. So EventBridge is a service that we've had here at AWS now for about a year and a half. And what EventBridge allows you to do is to create, distributed architectures where messages or events come into this concept of a bus, and then those can be sent out through multiple we call targets, or other destination services or technologies. Now, maybe a little too on the nose for given the fact that we had a pretty large scale event last week, but failure happens, right? Things go boom. There could be problems with stuff, and so you want to have in place things that can help you recover faster, help you be able to handle those failures, whether they be on the AWS side, whether they be, hey, a dev or an operations engineer changed the config, change the permission on something, and all of a sudden you've got a problem in your stack. And so two things were announced. One is DLQs, or dead letter queues, which is a common concept in queuing technologies, where you can basically capture an event or a message that has failed to be sent to the end recipient after however many times, and save that actually into another queue. So this can now go into an SQS queue so that you can replay it later. And then the other part of this is that we added some controls that allow you to control how this happens or when it happens. So previously, EventBridge would have done a very common kind of back off and retry against the target destinations, and depending on what the destination was. But now you have the ability to control the max number of retries and the maximum age of an event in the bus. And so this can be, again, really helpful for helping you build more resilient systems, for building more fault-tolerant systems, and for making sure that you don't lose data along the way, which is, in my mind, always the kind of the foremost thing is, hey, if I can capture this data, if I can capture these requests, if I can get these events and just hold on to them until there's a point where I could process them again, then ideally I've done so much more than if I just lost that data.
Absolutely. And then Amazon EventBridge replay and archiving, also really nicely named. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
And this is a cool thing where you can basically archive the events that are running through your Amazon EventBridge bus. You create a managed rule, sends it to an event archive, and then you can do different type of things. You can replay the events from that archive. Maybe you want to test another rule. You can filter them as they come out. Replay the stored events to all rules. So this is a cool thing that, in an event-driven application, when you've got, thousands, tens of thousands of events coming through EventBridge, you want to be able to model how you can evolve that application. The cool thing about EventBridge is you decouple the producers and the consumers, but you want to know what's going to, you may want to test what's going to happen with your previous messages, or you decide, hang on, I need another capability, but I also want to replay it on the old stuff. This is a great way to do it. So you've got the storage of the events in the archive, and then replaying them with filtering, replaying them through new rules. So super little, nice little tweak, but yes, going to be super useful for a number of people for extra functionality.
I can't believe we're still in pre-event. When will pre-event end, Julian?
I know. Should we do another one?
Awesome. So this was another pretty cool one, which Ben Smith on our team wrote the launch blog post for. You can find that on the Compute blog. But this is synchronous express workflows. So express workflows is a capability that we launched. I believe it was actually last reInvent. And express workflows as it is. Something we launched last year. It allows you to execute faster, kind of shorter time-bound step functions workflows. I believe the maximum timeout for them is 5 minutes. And previously, both express workflows and standard workflows have always just been asynchronous. You kick them off at some point, they go through whatever your workflow is, they end. And anything that you'd want to do in tracking the status of that or taking some action after that point became a system that you had to build or something that you had to work around. So synchronous workflows obviously solves that. So this is for, again, express workflows. And what this allows you to do is build some really kind of interesting applications and patterns, I would say, where you can invoke a step function and then sit there and basically wait for that response to come back to you. Pretty cool stuff. Again, unblocks you the ability to do these condensed, really fast workflows inside of a larger operation while still being able to get a response to send to a client. It's meant for really high volumes, so it can grow and scale really pretty far. That was one of the other things that Express Workflows was meant for. And so it unlocks really cool stuff. And if you go to the next slide, I like to think of these two as companions here. We also announced support for step functions plus Amazon API Gateway. And I believe Rob on the team took care of the launch post for this one. So if you put these together, a capability that API Gateway has is that it can execute step functions workflows. Well, now with the Express synchronous workflows, you have the ability to basically call an API, key off an Express workflow that could perform a whole bunch of advanced business logic, workflow, failure handling, talking directly to other services, and then give a response back out to your API. This allows you to do a lot of this while removing a lot of code. Because again, step functions basically gives you a whole bunch of controls for failure, retry logic, parallelization, decision-making. And so it's pretty cool stuff to be able to put all of this together now. And I think, again, it's going to unlock really powerful APIs that you could build yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris mentioning that synchronous literally behind the API. Think of clicking a button or something on a form. If you wanted it before to manage all the orchestration of some workflow that needs to, update the database, kick off a Lambda function, write something, read something, whatever, that can all be done in a super good workflow within step functions. So you're taking your code out of your Lambda function and using step functions as the orchestrator, which is a super powerful pattern. So yeah, this is going to explode. I think there are going to be lots of people with lots of really cool use cases for this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have like 6 minutes here. Oh, I got Sam. I forgot about Sam.
Yeah.
Sam CLI updates. So, man, Eric built this slide for us. Eric Johnson, who's in this room, is Mr. Sam CLI. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a whole bunch of support for these existing or for these newly launched features built into SAM, as well as some cool capabilities around improved build speeds, which folks really were excited about a lot. So we're trying to make it so that all this new stuff is right there in SAM and SAM CLI right as soon as those products launch new features. And so, you'll want to keep on top of this. But Eric, of course, has the awesome Sessions with Sam Twitch and video streams that you can go and check out. And you can find that on the Serverless Land YouTube page as well.
Ta-da!
Reinvent. We've survived pre-event. There you go. All right. So now we got 5 minutes to tell you everything that's going to happen in the next 3 weeks. We're going to go really, 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 really fast. Reinvent this year, a little different than normal years. Again, we all wish that we could be in person with people and experiencing what we have for the last several reinvents. Different kind of year, so different kind of experience. What's cool is, as Julian mentioned earlier in this, there's basically no barrier to entry for reinvent this year. There's no flights, there's no tickets, there's no customs or airport security, there's no paying for food in Las Vegas. There's
or even
no
for the conference. The conference is free.
It's completely free. So completely free. You could go to the reInvent page and still sign up right now today and be able to attend. Because this is a virtual event and we typically deliver hundreds of sessions in the 1 week that we do reInvent, we realized that was not going to be easy for folks who want to watch from home. So this year, reInvent's a bit different. So reInvent happens 3 days over 3 weeks. So the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 15th, 16th, and 17th. On these 9 days, you will see all of the same sessions that we used to do basically in 4 days. So expanded out, repeated multiple times, and you can watch them from the comfort of wherever you have internet and power and a laptop, iPad, what have you. And
they're also being streamed out at different time zones as well. So
yes, they're being streamed across different time zones as part of this. There's also a bunch of events that I don't know if they are being shared the same way time zone based. I think they are, which is called the AWS Late Night Play Parties or events. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on for these. There's live concerts, There's like hackathons. There's all sorts of games and things that people are doing. And so that is also something you could find out more about on the reInvent page.
Yeah, and that's also really, a lot of those stuff is really interactive, so you can work with teams and get some of that community feel as part of reInvent.
Yeah. Then the next biggest thing that people get excited about reInvent for is the keynotes. So the keynotes are where we make some of the biggest announcements in a given year, or talk in depth about our technology, our customers, our products, all sorts of cool stuff. In my mind, there's basically 3 key keynotes that we wanted to highlight. The first is Andy Jassy, who is the CEO of Amazon Web Services. He will be speaking tomorrow, doing the initial kind of kickoff keynote. Always a lot of cool stuff there. There might be some interesting serverless stuff there, I heard, Julian. I'm not sure, through the grapevine. I'm not sure.
Are we announcing serverless stuff at reInvent?
Oh. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah. Werner's keynote, which is happening this year on Tuesday the 15th. Also, Werner, an incredible speaker, incredibly, passionate, knowledgeable person. I should say Dr. Werner Vogels is part of this, who is the CTO of Amazon. Werner's talks and keynotes are always really, really awesome. So you want to check out that one. And then lastly, the David in this is David Richardson. So David Richardson is the VP of Serverless at AWS. He is our boss's boss, as it were. But he runs the serverless organization, leads for products like Lambda and API Gateway and EventBridge and Step Functions and SNS and SQS. And so somehow David's keynote is the last keynote of all of reInvent this year. So maybe they saved the best for last, is I guess what we can assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see that one on the 17th. So
and
3 keynotes.
That's serverless specific, and David's keynote is all going to be literally wrapping up some of the stuff we've talked about, but all the reInvent announcements, and also in a nice way, painting a bigger picture. Because I mean, we've flashed through all these kind of things. What do they mean in the bigger picture? What does it mean for you as a builder, as an operator, as an architect, as a company? David's keynote is going to have some cool stuff in there to think in the bigger picture of how does serverless work with the rest of what you're going to do for IT.
Yeah. Okay. What else? So we launched a custom reInvent serverless track organizer. You can find it on the Serverless Land website. And what we've done is pick what we think are going to be maybe some of the best talks, although there's a lot of talks again. There's still hundreds of talks this year. In the serverless track, there's 30 or so this year, I think, or something like that, 20 plus and change at least. But we wanted to highlight a couple of the key ones that are spread across a couple different weeks. In week 1, this week, starting tomorrow, with this is out of order. Starting tomorrow with Danilo, and then Sheen from Lego. That's my bad. Starting today, actually. Today is Danilo and Sheen. I might have messed up that. Copy and paste. Either way, it's in the schedule. Right. So Danilo and Sheen talking about Lego.com serverless architecture and how it's enabled them to accelerate innovation. Bunch of other talks. So this is the week 1 talks. On week 2, we've got a couple more. For those of you who are PHP fans, check out the Serverless Lamp Stack by Ben Smith from our team. Check out the security talk by Rob Sutter at the end. Also, though, check out Ajay's talk, SVS 305, Building Revolutionary Serverless Applications. It's going to be a really cool talk. Ajay's got some pretty interesting things he's going to discuss. And then week 3, this is, again, here's some of the rest of the stuff that we've got going on, including Julian's talk about observability.
And Chris's talk.
My talk, Eric's talk, a whole bunch of stuff. I think James had a talk on the previous slide. But yeah, we're all out there again.
We've got another one.
Oh, wait, there it is. Oh, my gosh, more slides. More things here. And then we've got some more week 3 sessions. So
but definitely also James's and Mark Brooker's. Mark Brooker is one of the cleverest Lambda builders, worked in Lambda for many years. The function isolation, deepest dive you could possibly get into Lambda. So yeah, absolutely worth looking at.
It's a 500 level talk. It's not even a 400 level talk. It's next, raises the bar in all ways.
And there's more Twitch as well, and there's more live streaming. So we've just started today on the 30th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 5 more live streams, and we, as you can see, we're bumbling all over our words and doing this live. We're going to have the whole team presenting this, and we're going to be picking apart some of the great announcements. We're going to be diving deep into some of them. I'm sure everyone's going to be able to be excited. You've got to get your questions answered. Hopefully we can be some of that hallway track for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to bumping into people in conference centers in Las Vegas. So yeah, you use this time to also ask your questions. We're going to be scouring literally reInvent for as much serverless content as possible, and yeah, bringing it to you live in various ways, shapes, or forms. QR codes there, as you can see, it's on Serverless Land YouTube and AWS Twitch. And yeah, that's literally going to be our live connection to the world.
Yeah. And these Twitch sessions are recorded. We will be posting them on Serverless Land. So if you miss one for whatever reason, we're going to try to churn back out the links to those as quickly as we can. So keep your eyes on the YouTube channel that we have here for Serverless Land. That's where we'll typically post this content for you.
Yeah, that's it. Any questions? We're happy to stick around for a little bit. I know our time is up, but I really appreciate Eric and James, who've been absolute machines on the question answering. But yeah, contact Chris and myself on Twitter and the rest of the team, and we'll do everything.
Keep your eyes peeled for the next couple of weeks here of serverless stuff. And again, we appreciate y'all following along with us both live here today and over the next couple days. Serverless Land, as we just pulled up here, this is a site that we've built to help collect all of the serverless information that is at AWS into one place for you. So this is serverlessland.com. You can go to /reinvent 2020 to find the session scheduler. We have blog posts, videos, and other things there. But my name is Chris Munns. I lead developer advocacy for serverless at AWS.
And yeah, I'm Julian Wood. I work on Chris's team with a great bunch of other people, and we're super excited this year to bring you as much serverless content as we can. Keep the questions coming, keep the conversation going. We'd love to help you out one way and get all your feedback back to the product management team the other way. So yeah, we're excited about what reInvent comes. I had a slight panic. I was just checking we hadn't extended this presentation and had the reInvent announcements on the next slide, but we removed them. So you're just going to have to wait, starting with Andy Jassy tomorrow. I'll send him a text message and just make sure he mentions serverless. I have my speed dial. I will do.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry for going a little over time, but we appreciate you hanging out with us. Have a great next couple of weeks. Stay safe, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Cheers. Thank you very much for joining us.